And I'm here today with Adam Clay and Michael Kleber-Diggs. We're going to talk about some work we've been doing involving this anthology, You Are Here, edited by Limon. It contains poems that are rooted in the natural world. But this is a project that would have been impossible without the vision of Megan Holt, who is voiceless due to the sacrifices she has made to get this incredible weekend of programming off the ground. Every time I come into this room, I am always floored by what I get to experience and to learn because of what Megan has pulled together out of this community. So I would like us to give her this particular programming is funded by a big Read grant that Megan and I completed while in a drug-induced fog. It just so happened that we had surgery on the same week. I was in the hospital for a week, and we were trying to meet the deadline of submitting this grant because we had worked together previously with a focus on incarcerated writers and the carceral experience in this state. And we knew that we wanted to do big read programming inside of prisons. And that was our vision with this grant that we filled out. So we selected this poetry anthology as our text with the idea that we would be able to invite writers who are featured in the anthology to travel with us into prisons. Our intent was to visit Orleans Parish Justice Center. That visit is on hold right now because of the situation that they're having. But we have been able to visit Angola just a few weeks ago, and just yesterday we visited the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in their new location. It was flooded in 2016 and they just built it again. And so Megan and I were struck by the fact, and I think our panelists will agree, that when you're inside of a carceral facility, the notion of place takes on a much different meaning because you're being held in place and you have very little control over when you are moved from place to place. But there is still time to find the natural world. And before we move on to our panelists, I'll just tell a story of a man I met in a facility who was talking about a tree. We weren't talking about trees, but he was talking about a tree. He was sitting across from the window, looking at a tree and talking about it while we were talking about someone else. And then when he read his work, we learned that for 2 years, while he was incarcerated, he had not been able to go outside because he wouldn't cut his dreadlocks. And so he kept his hair, but he wasn't able to go outside. And now he was in a place where he could go outside. And just the experience of going out and standing under a tree was something monumental because of how these systems had structured and restricted his life. So anyway, I am going to start by asking the poets to read their poems from the anthology, and we can take from there. Oh, I didn't say which one.
Oh,
You go first.
okay.
Y'all decided.
Hi, I'm Michael Kleber-Diggs. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm beyond delighted to be here with all of you. I got to town on Wednesday, and I have to go back because my wife lives in St. Paul. Otherwise, I'm not so sure. My poem in the anthology is called Canine Superpowers. It's got an epigraph, Como Park Woodland Outdoor Classroom for Ziggy and Jasper. Those are our dogs. We live across the street from a pretty large regional park, and most of my days began walking in the park with our two miniature golden doodles. The poem is Villanelle. Just in case there's so many literary people in the room, I'm quite confident everyone knows, but just in case, and also for video. A villanelle is a French form with 6 stanzas. It rhymes. First and third line of the first stanza repeat throughout the poem, and they also end the poem. Canine Superpowers. Como Park Woodland Outdoor Classroom for Ziggy and Jasper. We stroll the grounds and stop at every tree, at every chicken bone, each new cone flower. Their noses lead to everything we see. I'd be asleep if it were up to me. Still sick with dew, this city park seems ours as we stroll the grounds and stop at every tree. Perils persist, real possibilities. I scan the grass for things they can't devour. Their noses notice things that might harm me. Sometimes we'll spot a fox, surprise a bee, find trash, broken glass, have a sad encounter on our daily rounds to check on every tree. 3 times we've come upon wild coyotes, since before seeing through canine superpowers. All of them have smelled what I'm soon to see. They stare. We stare. There's no anxiety. Milliseconds transform into hours. We stroll the grounds and stop at every tree. Their noses lead to everything I see.
Thanks, Michael, and thank you, Alison, just for having us here, and Megan. Really happy to be here. I've long had an interest in teaching in prisons and have never really known how to get started with that. One of my dear friends, Matthew Hendrickson, who passed away in 2022, spent a lot of time with death row inmates in Arkansas teaching poetry. And I think one of the things about teaching in a prison is you just don't know how to get into the prison to teach. A lot of times it's who you know, it's having connections. And Alison came up to me. Our paths have kind of intersected in interesting ways over the years, but she came to me at a conference back in March and just said, I just need to meet you. I'm Alison. Would you like to come with me and go to Angola one day? I was like, hell yes.
It's like
I wanna go. Yeah, that was a pickup line, yeah. And I was so giddy. I was like, I've been wanting to do this for such a long time, and it's really been life-changing work. I feel like I'm kind of the rookie on stage a little bit. Still trying to figure out what I'm doing, but I feel like I'm a different person and a different poet already just after visiting these prisons a few times this year. So I'll read this poem, which is not a fancy villain at all, but a poem. I think thinking about space in sort of maybe some different ways that I think when we think of nature, we think of trees, we think of birds, but this poem is sort of thinking about outer space a little bit. I sent a poem to Limon for this anthology, and a few days went by and she wrote back and she said, can you send me a poem that's a little less sad? She's like, I'm looking for hope. So this is my response to that. Darkling, I listen. A professor once mentioned as an aside that there are lines in Ode to a Nightingale written to mimic the bird's call. Maybe he was right, or maybe he wasn't. Either way, the class spent a stretch looking, listening, mouthing the stressed and unstressed words on the page. On Keats's poem, a critic writes that lyric is thus a mode that simultaneously erases and expresses selfhood. I think of an eraser and a pencil working alongside each other. Part of me can't help but think that Keats called the birdsong immortal because of his poem and not the romantic idea that nature, through its cycles and turns, will ebb and flow forever. Sometimes the ego's optimism remains beautiful even when it's utterly and completely flawed. I'd rather think of Keats sketching himself back into place. On the golden record that's out of the solar system now, scientists deem the sound of birds important enough to include as a marker of our planet. Listening this morning to a clip of what someone or something might hear one day, I can't help but wonder if they'll even know what it is. Maybe they'll think it was the language we spoke to one another to say what we long for. The language we use to say, one day, when I'm gone and you're out among the trees, please, please remember me.
Thank you so much, both of you. Adam, I love how you mentioned, yes, just had a feeling, I mean, I don't go to everyone, I don't go up to everyone and say that, will you go to Angola with me? But I just had a feeling that it was the right choice, because I didn't want to bring someone who's like a sightseer or whatever. I wanted someone, because you have to be so giving of yourself, I think, in these facilities. And so I want us to talk a little bit about that. And I guess the way I'll start the conversation is by saying that yesterday we were visiting with the women at LCIW, and I was smiling so much that my face hurt. I felt like it was my wedding day, which I know sounds weird, but there was just everyone was so into it. There was so much joy in the room that it became possible for me anyway to kind of forget the environment where we were. So I was hoping we could kind of talk about the process of teaching poetry. There's no teaching that's going on. We're all just writing poetry and talking poetry and sharing poetry, and it's a total delight. So maybe you all can also help try to put that into words, because I feel like once more people know about it, we'll be trying to break down the doors of these places to get in and have these encounters with people.
We also had a bit of a greeting line yesterday,
Yeah.
so as the writers were coming in, we were at the door and said hello to everyone and handed them a book and some writing prompts and a pen. And so, yeah, the wedding metaphor works really well. And I'm Michael Kleber-Diggs. I'm here because I have, for almost 10 years, been teaching in Minnesota correctional facilities, in all the adult Minnesota State correctional facilities in Minnesota through a program called the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, which is about 15 years old. And through that organization, I've had the great good fortune of working with artists in multiple carceral facilities. I love everything about it except the setting and the conditions. But what has been kind of uniformly true for me in my experience over the years is that we have just a tremendous number of talented, earnest, thoughtful writers who are really excited to have an opportunity to share their work. I think with us, yes, but also with each other. We have learned over the years that, especially as we offer classes repeatedly in the same facility, we get to have a long-term relationship with the writers who live there. They also start to form their own community when we're not there. They start to partner with us on curriculum. They work through collectives. We have anthologies we've been able to edit and broadside competitions, and they have also edited their own anthologies, and the work is richly rewarding for that reason. When I got a request to come down and an opportunity to join a workshop at Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women, I was like, yeah, no, there's no question. I want to do that, and my time here has been rich in general, but my time with Alison and Adam yesterday at the facility with the women who were there was just really, really great. They were so excited to be there. We arrived at the weirdest time because it was during call, during counts. They had to count everyone, so we thought we would start at 11, a little bit later than that. And when they came in, we just hit it right away. And that felt great. I'll leave it there, but that was kind of my general experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think I went to Angola with you for the first time in May, if I remember correctly. And not having really had the experience of what that looks like, I was kind of going in as an observer. Alison obviously makes a nice setup. I think oftentimes what you find is you get to the facility and you're prepared. Like, I mean, for example, these prompts that we share with you, Alison and I wrote these over the course of a few days, I think, before a trip. You kind of go in thinking, I'm going to do all these things with them. And then you get to the gate and maybe you get right in. Maybe you get to the gate and you sit inside the gate in your car for an hour waiting to get in. And then you get in and then there's a count. and there's all these things that happen. But what I think is so great is you kind of like think through like what you want to teach or what you want to talk about, and you bring in a poem to them. And I think these people are they're so hungry for just a chance to talk among each other and with us. We can talk about the Ashley Jones prompt in a little bit that we used yesterday, but then also in Angola a few weeks back, a poem called Lullaby for Grieving, Lullaby for Grieving. And just talking to these men about grief. I mean, we spent an hour just talking about grief.
And we weren't talking.
No, we're just listening.
We were like, I find a lot of it is just getting out of the way, like maybe sprinkling a little bit of conversation and then watching it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember one of the men said, when you get here, there's a saying that you sort of leave your feelings at the gate. That one of the things you do is you just sort of leave your feelings, and I think in that we get a 4-hour stretch that day, which felt like not enough time. That's what we get. But just all the feelings that were coming out, and all the things that the men were saying about the way that they're experiencing grief, like loss, like losing people on the outside that they can't really grieve, was a really powerful experience to think about what that looks like. And so I think, we kind of go in with all these ideas of what we want to teach or what we want to do, but then they kind of have their own agenda. And they just open up and share with us what they're feeling and what they're thinking.
Yeah, and I'm big on these prompts. I don't know why, but I know that I've had people tell me that they enjoy working at night where it's quiet. There's a little more quiet, a little more privacy, and so I like leaving something behind so that we're never going to get to everything when we go in there, but if they feel like using the prompts, they can work on that. They can also not work on the prompts. Anyway, I would like to hear what you have to add, or we're done. Okay, we're done on that one. Okay, check. I love what you said about the greeting line, and Adam, I'm glad that you brought up all of the delays and the things that happen to us when we go in. Yesterday, for the first time, I had the experience of being turned away because we were too early. And you're laughing. I mean, it's like, because you have, I think it's a way to try to discourage us, and it just makes me laugh because I was like, fine, we're gonna go to Walgreens. I bought some pens and some soft drinks, and then we just went back. I mean, like, we're not leaving, we're not going anywhere. So I mean, it makes me laugh, but it's not funny at all. It's just a small taste of how one's time is manipulated and governed by the forces of these institutions. And we're in the position of just kind of dropping in and out as we make our appointments to do so. But I can't imagine the stress of having my life governed by these just random lines and waiting and standing, just, I don't know. I thought maybe we should talk about some of these poems that we've been reading with our friends on the inside. So we could start with the poem by Ashley Jones on page 41 in the anthology. It's called Lullaby for the Grieving. And I guess, I have the microphone, I'll read it. I've read it so many times. As a writer, I myself often need help getting started, and so one of my favorite tricks is to steal from other poets, and I'm not even going to apologize because I just think that's okay. And so there were lines in this poem that I thought would be such good jumping off points for the group, which is why I kept coming back to it. I'm going to have a little explosion of paper here. Okay. So this is Lullaby for the Grieving by Ashley Jones, who herself is in Alabama, where she's poet laureate. Make small steps in this wild place. There are signs of life everywhere. Sharp spaces, too. The slip of a rain-glazed rock against my searching feet. Small steps, like prayers, each one a hope exhaled into the trees. Please let me enter. Please let me leave whole. There are, too, the tiny sounds of faraway birds, the safety in their promise of song, the puddle forming finally after summer rain, the golden butterfly against the cave dark. Maybe there are angels here too. What else can I call the crown of light atop the leaves? What else can I call my footsteps forward? Small, small, sure. Do you want to talk about some of the reactions we had yesterday?
We invited all the writers who were with us to just pick lines that stood out to them, and surprise, a lot of them were the same lines that stood out to you, and people were saying, they were noticing, please let me leave whole, which is resonant with the setting. And the line with angels, where are you? Maybe there are angels here too, and other lines. And just invited people to take those lines and build poems from them. And the reaction, I want to say, first and foremost, we've been in the room at this point for about 10 minutes. And the pens were flying across the paper. And then we said, after a period of writing, you're invited to share, you're not required to do it. And I didn't count, but I think everyone did.
Almost.
If not everyone, one or two people chose to keep close what they've written. But there was a tremendous amount of energy in the space, as there often is when writers get together, when creatives get together. That energy creates its own momentum. And that happened there too. I'd like to share one of the poems in conversation with the poem you shared. It's called Green Eyes Crying, and it's written by Amy. There are signs of life everywhere, energy and motion all around me. I feel dizzy, a little lost. Small, all the things I need are signs of you. Little boy, here and then gone. The sound of your smile echoing long after you've gone. Maybe there is an angel here, after all. I wish you would stay with me, so I could be found. I look down through the haze of gray and see the glow of your halo, and I hear an angel sing to me.
And the reason we have that poem from Amy and this other handful of poems that I have here is because not only did they write them and share them with us in this space, they also copied them and gave them to us with permission to share with you all. In a perfect world, I feel like we would not be up here, or we would be up here in a group talking about this together instead of speaking for the people we've had the pleasure of working with. Did you have a poem you want to read, or we have so many?
I could talk about one that stuck with me from yesterday.
Yeah.
I think the conversation about grief, it's an interesting poem because Lullaby for the Grieving, I think you kind of read the poem and you sort of forget what the title is, and you go back and you're like, oh wait, what is this about? And we talked about a little bit kind of the idea of a lullaby being this thing that sort of calms the child, puts the child to sleep, and this idea of kind of putting grief to sleep. And we had a conversation, I think both at Angola, but also yesterday too, about like how grief, we kind of want grief to be rational and logical. We sort of want it to be this like straight line, a linear thing. And we talked a lot about how it's not like that, how it kind of comes back. And so many of the poems I think emphasize that. I think the one that sticks to me, I'm not sure if it's in there or not, but it was a really amazing poem about a bird flying into a window at LCIW.
Yeah.
Is it in there? I think it's Liv, maybe was the poet.
And while you're looking, I can remember, I took notes in my book when we were with the men in Angola, and someone said, I would like to be on someone's mind.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who said that, but so when we go back, I'm gonna have to say, whoever said I would like to be on someone's mind, you've been on my mind this whole time. Just in that circle, which becomes, one of the things I think is so important about nature is not that it's pretty and beautiful. We can make any place that kind of sacred place. In the library, looking at the little boring birds that are coming in, or the absolutely bare landscape that we witnessed yesterday. It was bare except for one weird thing, and I won't give it away. I'll let one of y'all say what it was.
There were two of them.
There were two of them.
Yeah.
They have plastic coyotes with also like, I don't know, was there an intro type situation?
I think they just tipped over.
Okay. They have plastic coyotes in kind of the quad area. You enter through kind of security. The facility itself is a square of sorts, and in the middle there's sidewalk and grass. And
Did you say coyotes?
Yes, we did.
Okay, I
in order to keep geese from spoiling the facility, they have two plastic coyotes that are placed strategically, and they move them every day, so the geese don't come to realize that they're not real. But from a distance, when I first saw it, I was like, what on earth is that?
I thought it was a goose
Yeah.
because it was kind of hunched over. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's a bizarre caricature of a wild thing in this place. Not a single flower, nothing. It was not the best. But we also had that skyline yesterday, and we weren't the only ones looking at that. Everybody was watching the clouds kind of roil, and then at one point there was a dark and a light. I mean, it was pretty metaphorical. Okay, so it was a plain and unadorned environment, but there's still little windows where we're able to see and observe and shape our thoughts and hearts to that kind of space.
Yeah, I think going to Angola is always an experience because you're sort of driving in the middle of nowhere for a long time. It's a place it's built on old plantation land, which is not subtle at all. And it's a place that they want to make it difficult for people to get there, to visit. It's not a place that you can just get to easily. And it's interesting to sort of be in a space that's just, there's so much of the natural world around you driving out there, and then you kind of get into the facility and it's gone. Except
They always have flowers at the gate,
Yeah.
like at the front gate.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, we do see rose bushes, like in Angola on the walk in front of the multiple chapels that are open. There are rose bushes.
Yeah, and cats.
Many.
Many cats.
Too many.
Yeah.
I thought it was a peacock, because you know how peacocks make that sound if you've heard them at the zoo? It was making that sound, but then I realized, oh, it's a cat, and I know what that sound means. It's going to be more cats. So, Michael, I saw the poem that you had in your hand, and I thought we could talk about fixed forms a little bit. And I know that sounds like maybe a weird subject, but I'll tell you why. In the back of the book, the penultimate poem is by Patricia Smith. It's called, I just forgot the title, because that's what my brain does on stage. It is called To Little Black Girls Risking Flour. And it's a double golden shovel, which means that, a golden shovel means you take a quote of poetry and you use each word down as the ending word of one of your lines of poetry. And Patricia Smith, because she's a genius, she does it going down and up the side. So anyway, do you want to talk about the experience of explaining that?
Sure. Adam and I also read our poems yesterday. Alison read the poem yesterday, and I talked a little bit about a villanelle. Kind of wrote a format for a villanelle on a whiteboard, and when I turned around, lots of people were writing it down. And it's not the easiest form, and neither is a golden shovel. So you have a quote or a line of poetry or an entire short poem, and those are your last word in each line. And so we talked to them about Patricia's poem, we read it together. We showed them its trick in a way, how the quote that begins the poem also frames the end of each line and then comes back up the other side backwards. And it was kind of fun watching them go, oh my God, that's really cool. And he said, let's write a golden shovel. And it was the same reaction, the same energy, the same intensity, the same kind of contagious joy working on the poems. And we were bouncing around, the three of us. We'd just kind of go table by table, like, are you
Just like a regular
yeah,
classroom.
just checking in. How can I answer any questions? And I got to talk to Chavez, and I showed her how Patricia went down and then came back up. And I did not say that's what we're asking you to do, but she wrote this poem called Risk that does the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, risk can be very dangerous at times, but risk even can be very good and daring. It too can be very fulfilling at times. All that's left to do is it rather than not. Even nothing on this earth can stop you until there's nothing standing in your way. There's still everything, something and nothing. All seems good, great, and some left. It's okay, scary, cool, calm, collected. So risk it all, even a little. So, therefore.
I could see her face. She was so excited finishing this poem. Like the way you feel when you finish a poem or you finish writing something, it just feels like the most beautiful thing. And one thing I enjoy emphasizing with forms or quote unquote rules in poetry is that they exist to be either ignored or broken or subverted in some way. And so it actually allows you to have a certain type of freedom even inside of what by definition is a restriction. And I think that translates really well to this group. And also, you can you can get away with stuff in a poem because no one's paying attention. They don't take it seriously. They're like, oh, it's poetry, whatever. Those weird people are here doing poetry. And that's fine because we can, be doing what we want and have, have the freedom to play around with these. And it looks like you found one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we, I think as they sort of came in, Michael mentioned the sort of like welcome, the kind of greeting line that happened. And it's interesting because they all sort of pair up with each other. One of them even came in and got two of the little index cards for the name tags and wrote her friend's name on the other one next to her before her friend got there. And these were two women that you would not think would have been friends, but you could tell they were tight. But there was one woman sitting on the very far end of the room by herself. The only person sitting by herself, I think. And you kind of wonder, like, what's going on here? What's happening? And she kind of jumped in at one point, and we're like, oh, she's paying attention. She knows what she's doing. But Michael talked about the villanelle for a while, and then we shifted to the golden shovel. And as I floated over to her, I realized she was sort of conflating the two forms together. Sort of a golden shovel villanelle. And she's like, I don't know if I'm doing this wrong. I'm like, no, you're doing it right. Just keep doing what you're doing. There's no wrong here. So I'll just read her poem, Shamaria. My glasses. The poem is called Normal. As I breathe slowly, my mind wanders. Where am I? How deep is the hold? I reach out to the air, but no one there. No one cares, no one hears, no one feels the agony and resentment that I carry. So cold, so wet, I don't get scared, for my fear has turned into nothing. My thoughts keep haunting me, and still I can't find my way out of here. Who am I? What place have you created? Slowly, oh slowly shall I breathe. Is it okay if I leave? If not, that's fine. I visit here all the time.
What place have you created? What place have you created? I mean, isn't that the question of life? Like, I don't know. Every time I go into a classroom like this, I do it with the intention of, I think, okay, I can start change. This can be changed, but I'm the one that keeps getting changed. I feel so rich with what I've learned and what I've experienced and how people have opened up to us and welcomed us. I mean, you all were writing with the group yesterday, and I was trying to as well, but I think, oh, I can't. I don't have enough time. I don't have an idea. This isn't right. I just couldn't do it. And I mean, I wanted to do it, you know, but I'm just so constantly amazed at how people just can get it down and share it and put it out there. Anyway, I want, you know, Adam, I have on here a poem. Yeah.
So, Adam and I took a moment to, like, while everyone else was writing, to write as well. And it's a good practice for professors. You know, we were talking on the way out there about how some of our best poems come in that easy breezy, hey, students do this, and they're going, I'll do it too, and you're almost like, you can let go in that way. Within correctional facilities, I want to start by saying that for me, over the years, teaching at the college level and teaching correctional facilities, for me personally, the biggest difference is there's no internet access. That's the biggest difference to me. The writers that I encounter in a correctional setting generally are more eager, more engaged. I think less able to take the class for granted, and I think that shows up in effort. But it's still, the internet is the biggest difference. And when I'm writing with everyone, when we're reading things that we've written together, my favorite thing about that is that it's just, as Adam alluded to a moment ago, it's just writers in the room writing. On the very first night of the conference, of the festival here, there was a panel that was talking about the exhibit at the museum. I'm from out of town, and I lost what was.
It was the Capital State.
Capital
It was
State
the Historical New Orleans collection, and I know probably everyone in the room is familiar with that.
And the conversation kind of turned to tearing down walls, literal walls and metaphorical walls. And I was reminded, just very briefly, of we have to take training once a year to volunteer in correctional facilities in Minnesota, and it's usually religious groups, a small group of people who are leading athletic programming, and then one or two weird creative writing people. And I was sitting next to a guy who said, you know, what church group are you in? And I'm like, I'm
The Church of Poetry.
Church of Poetry. I said, that's so interesting. And then he told me that when he was in high school, he was an older gentleman, and he lived in the town that the prison was in, that the high school basketball team almost every day went into the prison to play basketball against men who lived there. And that for him, it's like, it's so strange that over the years, there's become this big separation between people who are incarcerated and people who are not. And I am so hopeful that, first, of course, we'll have fewer prisons, no prisons, shorter sentences. But while we're doing that work, I'm so hopeful that we'll tear down any metaphorical walls, that we'll begin to see that people who live in correctional facilities just live in a different setting than we do. And in every other respect, they're worthy of our time and our attention, and our support and our encouragement. And one of the things that I enjoy about getting a chance to do this work is that it serves as a reminder of that all the time.
I mean, I don't have anything to say other than I agree. And Adam, you were talking earlier about how difficult it is simply to access, like Angola in particular. And I feel like prisons should be centrally located. I feel like we need to look at what these laws mean. I think we need to look at the reality of that. And then when it's so far removed, you don't see it. You don't see men in fields work. I mean, they're doing it's slave labor. I mean, it's fair for me to say that. That is a true statement. And so I think anything we can do to bring eyes to it, but of course we can't, because we can't. There's no cameras. We have no way to document this other than through us vocalizing our experience. And again, ideally, we would have the members of our classes up here with us, and we would be off on the side, and they would be much more entertaining. We said the Church of Poetry, and so I thought I would start preaching. And Adam, would you read the poem by Ilya Yansky?
Of course, yeah.
And then you can talk about why we.
What page is that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Page
It's
43. Yeah, Alison and I, we had a quick Zoom meeting to kind of talk through some prompts, and I think we had maybe 10 in mind, roughly.
We just couldn't do it all.
We just couldn't do it all, and I think our goal is to maybe write a whole book of prompts using each one of these poems. I think mainly because it sort of, I don't know, I think as a student I didn't really like prompts. I kind of thought they were artificial or kind of too formulaic, but I think when you're writing in a prison, like a prompt is like a way in to write. It's a way to find inspiration. It's a way to kind of build that sort of, I don't know, that first draft of a poem. And I always sort of tell my students, like when I teach prompts at the university, like I'm teaching these prompts, but I kind of want you to do this on your own later. You should be able to read a poem and reverse engineer it and think through, how can I write something that's in conversation with this? And so this poem by Eli Kaminsky, which I think Alison chose as a prompt for them, it's called Letters. Rain has eaten a quarter of me, yet I believe, against all evidence, these raindrops are my letters of recommendation. Here is a man worth following.
I love that poem, and I mean, guess what line? Because when we go in, I like to ask for volunteers to read the poem, and I like to ask for a few volunteers because it's interesting to hear how people emphasize certain lines. It's just an interesting way to start a conversation about a poem. And you can probably guess the line that's stuck with everyone from this poem. I see Brad's head moving. Do you want to shout it out? Against all evidence. I was thinking, here is a man worth following on. But yes, evidence, that legal language. And the reason I wanted to use this poem and to pilot the prompt at Angola is because inside of that room, during one visit, I learned that many of the men who are in the poetry club were also ASL interpreters. And so we had this fascinating conversation about the language of the body and how if one were to interpret a poem using ASL, you're using your body. You're not just spelling out the letters of the poem. You're doing thunder, and they did it way better than I did. Okay? And so I wanted to bring that to their attention because Ilya Kaminsky is deaf, and when he gives a poetry reading, he has the poems on a screen behind him, but he also has an ASL interpreter during the reading, and I wanted to bring that connection to them to say it. And so they could have cared less about the author of the poem. I think they were stuck on the line of poetry. So anyway, that was a really great story that we have to tell, and that there's no way that you can see it except through our description of this experience.
Yeah, there was one man there who, I mean, he was getting so moved talking about this poem, and he sort of stood up and had to pace around the room. And you just it just felt like a space for him to like share something in a room with people who were listening to him. It's really a powerful experience. And I think this poem really, I think kind of one of the things we landed on with it was this idea that that nature is sort of indifferent to all of us. Even if you're in a prison, nature, it affects, here's a man worth following on. Like, it's all worth following on, right? We're all like that. We talked a lot about the experience of being in the rain and how, I remember a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, my children in the rain, just loving it. And then how sometimes you're in your office and your umbrella's in your car or whatever, right? And it's kind of this thing. It's an interesting conversation, and then talking about like not really having had that experience of being rained on.
Yeah.
But how nature, it's indifferent to us, right?
I remember one of the men, this is Whitehead, so, and this is someone who's a delightful person, but also shares the name of our great teacher, and was using the metaphor of rain falling on his face to describe something after not having felt it for a long time.
Alison, would you mind talking a little bit about your laureateship and how it kind of supported this effort on behalf and some of what you're thinking about
Sure.
for the
Sure.
Sure. When I was poet laureate, I was invited to visit the poets at Angola by a woman named Marianne Fisher Girlando, who became, I was a little afraid of her at first, but she became my mentor. And I said, yes, of course I'll do that. And I didn't know what I would do because I was thinking, what do I have to bring to this group? What could I possibly say that's going to matter? Which was kind of a dumb thing of me to think because obviously it's poetry, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to bring in one book with me. And so, Kelly, I asked you about what to bring. Do you remember that? And you said they want poems about their moms. And so, I mean, I didn't have a book of poems about moms, but what I did is I brought a book of poetry prompts, and then I copied in poems on the blank pages. And I wish I had taken a better note of what I wrote in the book, but one of them was a poem about family. It was by Jericho Brown, the great, amazing Louisiana poet, and it was called In Them, which I know I have to explain to this group, like my mom and them. And they loved it so much, and I was like, Kelly was right. So I was able to bring in a book of poems, and we ended up talking about that poem that I had written down in the book, which I left there, and I found out I wasn't supposed to do that, but oh well. But before we even read those poems, when I walked in the room, I realized I was exactly where I wanted to be, and that I was coming back, and that it felt like the most important thing I had ever done. And so it was a great visit. They set up the room. It was like you would have thought a dignitary was visiting. They had a semicircle of chairs, and then there was like this desk for me behind it, and like a bottle of water and all this stuff. Like I was going to be separate from the group on this pedestal. I was like, no, we're not doing that. And I put my chair on the other side, and I think that kind of gave them an idea of the type of relationship that I wanted to have, I guess. And anyway, so in my mind, I knew that I was going to do this again. The naive part of me, which is very strong, had absolutely no realization about how difficult it would be to make that happen. Like, you can't just call the people and say, can we do poetry in your prison? And the reason I know that is because I've tried. But I started spending every Thursday and Friday trying to figure out ways to get into other prisons. And anyway, I finally started wearing people down, and it started happening. I was lucky enough to receive a fellowship from the Academy of American Poets, and it funded this work for a year. And now I'm thinking bigger, and rather than just doing one visit, I want to create sustained writing workshops or environments at prisons across the state. And I would like to be able to do that through universities so that there can be a sustained relationship, because I can't myself just go all of the time. I mean, I just can't go as much as I would like to go. So that's my vision moving forward. And we just need money to fall out of the sky, but not that much money. So, I mean, poetry is cheap, right? It's not that much.
Yeah, I mean, and so much of it too. I mean, like, I think just spending time with the warden yesterday, like, she just really valued what we're doing there. And I think wants us to come back. I mean, she said, come back, please.
Yeah.
So
And I have her cell phone.
yeah.
So I always get the cell phone if possible.
Yeah.
And so we will. And I'll just be strategic now. And so one of the other pleasures of the laureateship was being able to bring a group of poets, of 8 poets, to Angola for a poetry reading. And this was something I did. I know Sean's out here. I can't see him, but I know he's here. Oh, I see your hands. Okay. This was with the New Orleans Poetry Festival. And this was the first time ever. Like, I made this ask, and I couldn't even believe I was asking it. And then they said yes. And I was like, what? And so we were able to bring in 8 poets who did a poetry reading in the chapel at Angola, which is, it's just very obviously a holy place. And it was great. I mean, Sean, I know, I can't see what you're doing, but I know you're nodding your head. I just know that for a fact. It was such a great afternoon. And everyone who participated, it was the favorite thing they've ever done in their lives. They all want to go back. I mean, that's all they talk about. One guy flew from Chicago on his own dime to read 2 poems at Angola. So anyway.
In Minnesota, before the pandemic, we had a reading series that we curated through the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. And one correctional facility, the only one that would allow us to do it, and we would bring in writers from the community, and we would read poems, and the artists that we worked with through MPW would also read poems, and every single time, even though there is a visual distinction, people who live in the correctional facility wear chambray shirts and specific kinds of jeans, uniformly excellent tennis shoes, and people in the community are not allowed to wear those colors. You forget. It's just poet, 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 and then it all starts to kind of blend together. And I really love that. And the idea of arts programming also kind of happening in correctional facilities has a lot of energy behind it.
I'm not complaining, but they kind of think I'm a miracle worker because that happened. And they're like, can you ring Jericho Brown? I'm like, well, I will try. And another, at the women's prison, we didn't talk about Denez Smith's poem in the anthology, but they really loved Denez Smith. We read Ode to My Gold Teeth. I don't know if y'all know that poem, but it was, Megan was there. I don't know if she's still here, but she came with me for that visit, and it was great. It was such an icebreaker. So I feel like we're supposed to ask for questions.
I think that's right.
Do you have questions? Anyone? No one has. We were so thorough that we just.
We were good.
We were good.
We're clear.
Okay.
I can ask you all a question. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start with Michael and then Alison. I'm curious, like, I mean, I'm new to this, but I'm kind of curious, like, how this work has influenced your own writing, like your writing life.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Adam. So, let me back up. My twin brother and I lost our father to gun violence when we were 8. And I'd had a poetic practice for quite a long time before I first taught a class at a correctional facility. By the way, my first class was kind of hilarious. I was up at the whiteboard lecturing, and I turned around, and everyone in the room was just like, "Who is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, they don't want to lecture on poetics. They want a conversation. They want to write and not be talked at." Anyway, I had a lot to learn. I did not walk in thinking of myself as a crime victim, and it's not something that really came up for me at all connected to that being in that space. What happened though is I just kept spending time with writers who would go into their darkest room, into their most difficult room, and write there. And I had been writing for years, lots of poems about whatever was showing up, whatever was present in the day, whatever I found compelling, but not about my father. And I think that probably the biggest thing that started to happen is I drew strength from their strength, and I drew courage from their courage. And I had not been teaching very long when I was at my writing desk working on a poem about squirt guns. And then I'm like, I think I know why this is showing up. And it was a decision point for me. Am I going to go into my most difficult room? And I did. And I know, 100% know, that that was because I saw people just doing it over and over and over. Yeah.
I figured out early on, I got more passionate about the work and trying to make it happen and make the connections. I mean, and when I say the work, I mean the work of bringing the poetry into the prisons and being in community there. I got way more focused on that than my own poetry. It just seemed unimportant. Like, I was just like, whatever. This is way, and I feel like it is, like it's way more important. I did write one sonnet, Crown, over the summer, and it was about what I've witnessed, I guess. But it kind of takes a lot out of me. Like, I just feel really depleted. I'm totally there in the moment, like just so on. And then I feel like a balloon kind of this is bringing me to tears for some reason, I don't know why. I feel like a balloon that's kind of deflated, and so I don't have a lot of work right now, which is fine. I mean, whatever. And I also, and I've said this to the group, this didn't come up yesterday, but a lot of times I feel that the act of the creation is more important than the artifact, and so I feel really rich on the act part, and I'm just at the present time, I'm artifact poor, which is fine. So,
Yes.
I was wondering, do you see this work moving into any of the immigration facilities, the detention centers?
no, but not, the question was, have we done any of this work in the immigration facilities?
Or do you see it moving into that or expanding into that?
I knew of one facility in Wynne, Louisiana, which is a private facility, and so when I say the word private, that's the real problem, and I did reach out to them early on. I was like, I have bilingual poets who will come. I did not, but I was gonna get in and then find them. I would just go find somebody to come with me. So I have not had a lot. I have not been able to do that. I do know that they are building a facility in Angola. I don't know where. It's not in sight of where the main prison is. And when that, I mean, I don't want that to get off the ground. I want it to crumble into a pile of sticks. But when that gets off the ground, I will resume that again. But so my answer is no, but I was trying.
I know, Allison, I know you're going to call anyway and ask anyway, and one of the things that we try not to learn too well in our time doing this work is how fragile it is based on leadership changes. So in Minnesota, if a governor changes, the commissioner of the Department of Corrections changes, if a warden changes at a facility, the impact on our programming in general and in facilities can change immediately and overnight, which is my perhaps not too subtle way of saying this particular presidential administration would probably be very difficult in terms of partnering on that type of thing. But a lot of times, a person at a specific facility.
It's an individual, I think, more than yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just poetry. It's just stupid
Right.
poets, whatever.
They spoke on that. Like they kind of like, oh, it's just some faults. Tire themselves out or whatever. But that could be a real asset. But it's important to always ask. Yeah.
Can I actually ask a follow-up to that? So back in Colorado about 15 years ago, I used to teach in a nice facility with bilingual individuals, and
Well, then we're going to call you when this goes through.
eventually we were shut down because the professor that ran it did something that the warden disagreed with.
Yeah.
So I guess my question, and the other conflict in this situation was the warden was kind of tolerant, and so therefore there was no recruitment opportunities and efforts. So I'm just curious about the logistics with your programming here. Is how do you recruit? Is it kind of word of mouth through the individuals, or is there?
When you say recruit, do you mean people to go with me?
No, I mean recruit incarcerated individuals to attend.
It goes from facility to facility for me. At Angola, there's a poetry group that's established.
Okay.
I've been to some, at the women's prison where we were yesterday, the warden had a group of people that she thought would really benefit from the programming, and she said, can you do 41? And I was like, yep, bring them, you know. At some places, my preference is that they do an open call, because I don't want anybody to be kicked out of the poetry class or kept out of the poetry class because they haven't had such and such a test or their literacy isn't the best. Like, I could care about any of those things. My preference would be the open call.
In Minnesota, there's a communication system. We use what are called kites. and their messages, rather like emails, they go out facility-wide. And if they're coming from the facility, then they go to everyone. And when a class is posted, a kite will go out to everyone who's in that facility, inviting them to take part in it. There are eligibility requirements. So for example, if you've got demerits of some kind, you may not be eligible. Many facilities will also do a conflict check. If there's concern about two people who don't necessarily get along in the classroom together, that kind of a thing. But our partners in the Department of Corrections in Minnesota, they send a note to everyone, which is kind of an ideal way to do it.
I had one group where they were asked to write letters, and I was supposed to go through all these letters, and I was like, I think they should all be in the class. So it was a big class. Yeah. They're I mean, I'm not, like, if you want, in my poetry club, if you want it, you're in, welcome. You know, anyway, maybe one more, if there is one more.
I have one.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, good evening. Thank you all so much for just everything that you have done and are doing. I'm a sibling of incarcerated folk in California. And one of my brothers started his life there when he was like 14. He's now almost 50. And one thing I'm curious, or one observation that I had, tell me your name again on the end.
Michael.
That Michael talked about, I really appreciated you humanizing them. Oftentimes, that population is seen to be different than the rest of us. I think the only difference is they got caught and we didn't, right?
Right.
Many of us had ran lights. Now in Louisiana, you can't talk on your phone while you're driving. We still do. You know what I'm saying? Like so many things. They just got caught. We didn't. So I appreciate you humanizing that population. I am curious from each of you, just how has that experience allowed you to just reconcile and accept like life for what it is, right? Because sometimes sometimes the biggest turmoil that we cause ourselves is when we reject something. Instead of just accepting it for what it is. It doesn't mean that we have to accept what it is, but we're accepting how we are in that moment. So I'm curious, how has this particular experience for this project allowed you all to just be with life in whatever way? Anyone can go first.
I have just, I want to start by saying there's a really powerful organization in Minnesota called We Are All Criminals. And it's led by a woman named Emily Baxter, who for years went around interviewing people who have never been in prison and asking them, what did you get away with? And the answers, by the way, shocked her. In other words, a lot of felonies. And her mission with that was just to try to tear down that distinction. You already spoke on it. A lot of times it's, I didn't get caught. And that's about who's over-policed and who's under-policed and who's granted grace and who isn't, which touches on all types of things, race and class and everything else. They've got a great website, by the way. You can see work that poems and things have been written by artists in Minnesota through her website. For me, growing up as a black man in the 70s and 80s, having friends who did get caught up in the system, I think I always had kind of a there, but for the grace of God, go I attitude about it. And however I felt about that increased significantly through my time working with people in prison. And what I really came to understand, and it's through the writing that we offer a prompt. The prompt, a lot of times, it's general. You can take it in any direction that you want to. A poem about an angel might take you in a spiritual direction. But people will write about their experience before they were incarcerated. They'll write about what led them to be incarcerated. They'll write about their incarceration. But it's that before part where I often just get a real sense for how much more difficult the average person that I work with in corrections, how much more difficult their life was than my life was. And I try to stay humble just in general. But I found a new gear with it, to be honest with you, just having a chance to, and by the way, it's a real gift for people to share something like that with me. But yeah, I really, there, but for the grace of God, I had quite a lot of luck. My home, for all its imperfections, was quite a bit better than his home and his home and his home and his home. My school was, my neighborhood was. I could just keep going all the way down. And in every other way, I feel that I'm the same. An idea that I've taken on is to share with people, because most of my friends, what they know about correctional facilities, they know from television. And there's elements of truth in it, but here's the big lie. The big lie is that people who live in prison are what? Hard, angry, lifting weights, treated the way, whatever you want to apply there, but they're all reduced down to some kind of caricature. And that's a huge lie, huge. So what I tell people all the time is I am sometimes the most educated person. I'm never the smartest. And I'm not always the best writer. Often I'm not. And what I hope to impart with that, gosh, this is a long answer, I'm terribly sorry, is that we really, if you strip away circumstance, we actually are artists together. We've lost, and this came up in the Capital States panel also, we've lost so much talent, so much intelligence, so much potential human flourishing through our carceral state. And I get to see that too. I should not in the first place. Oh, it's a lot. Keep going. But that's how it's affected. That's how it's going to affect my life.
People always expect to hear some horror stories, oh my God, whatever. And so I'm always very quick to call out that type of language or that type of reaction. And one of the real world things I've started to do is to encourage people. One group that I found really helpful was the Frederick Douglass Project for Justice. This is in Louisiana, it's the Parole Project that runs these visits, but they bring groups of outside people inside of prisons across the state for not only a tour so you can actually see what it's like, but the most important of it is this large and small group conversation that occurs between the outside people and the people who are inside together, having conversation and finding out that thing that you were talking about, which is, oh, these are people, they have hopes, they have dreams, they have grief, they worship, they do basketball, whatever, So I try to spread the word about that type of thing. And then the other thing I try to do is get myself out of the way, like when I'm in those start it, but then just get out of the way because it's not about me.
Yeah, I love that question. I think for me, the first time I went in, I had no idea what to expect. Yeah, I think there's all these cliches that you sort of imagine. I think when I was in grad school, we went to a few juvenile facilities to do some writers in the schools program, but there's something to me about kind of getting to the gate in Angola and taking your watch off and putting your phone away, and you're in a place where you just have to sort of slow down and observe the world. And there are times where I'm like, God, I wish I could this, or take a picture of that, or do, you know, or whatever. So I think in a lot of ways it's kind of changed the way I like think about the world. I think it's what, I mean, we live in a time where like we're not really allowed to slow down and to like, and to sort of observe the world. And there's a quote I heard, Gregory Corso went to a prison at the end of his life, and one of the writers there said something like, you don't serve time, you make time serve you. Which I love that idea. And I think being in the room with all these men and women who are just like, they're deeply introspective, they're observing the world they live in, but also like their past, their future, kind of imagining. I think last time I read the poem that's in the anthology that I wrote, and we talked a lot about like, what's your legacy to the world? Like, how do you want to be remembered? And it was just this amazing conversation to sort of think about. I also just think like a lot of the experience is just going to the room and just like humanizing, you know, because they are humans, you know, like I think the last time we went in, one of them hugged me when we first got in, and I was like, okay, you know, it felt like a big thing, but just shaking their hands, looking them in the eye, and introducing yourself. These are things that I think.
I touch everybody in prison, like, I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds bad. Please erase that from the day. What I meant to say is, if someone offers a hand to me or an embrace, I accept it.
Yeah.
And talking about, did you want to read, do you want to close with Wadding's poem that you
Yeah,
wrote in
I can do
response?
that, yeah.
If you can read
Is
the
this
writing.
it?
Yeah. This was one of our writers at Angola, and he was writing about the golden record that is referred to in Adam's poem, and maybe we'll end on that.
Yeah, and one of the prompts we kind of talked about, it's something I've done with high school students too, when I teach in the summertime at Kenyon College, this program, but kind of this idea of like loop writing, like where will I be in 3 hours? Where will I be in 3 days? Where will I be in 3 years? Where will I be in 30 years? Where will I be in 3,000 years? And it's really just like, I think it sort of forces you to think about like, what am I doing? You know, like what's the legacy, and will any of this matter? Will, you know, who knows? But yeah, while I wrote this great poem, I'll do my best here. 1,000 years from now, and I would like to be known as a person that did not sleep nor slumbered when it came to living positive life. Just to think of someone, something, reading about my golden record will keep them seeing that positive living is for anyone.
And he likes to copy his poems and hand them out, so if he sees someone having a bad day, he's going to go to his locker and get a poem, give you a poem.
He had one of them on his shirt the last time we were
Yes.
there. He had a shirt with one of his own poems on it, which I just thought was amazing.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming out and for